All right. Let's see. All right. Here we go. Let's see. So today we're going to be talking about lenses, and I'm going to be trying to get my screen all set up so that I can show the presentation. Um, I'll see if folks can see my screen, and yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. Um, so I have a presentation that I am going to fire up, and we're going to see if we can't get, let's see, let me start this over here. Hmm. Okay, so I will share my screen. And here we go. Go ahead and start the presentation. All right. Can everyone see my screen? I really hope you can, because I'm getting zero feedback from anybody. Let's see. Okay. We'll confirm that everybody can see the screen. Okay, here we go. So let's talk about user interfaces. Um, there's a lot of different places that you can use lenses, but we're going to focus on the UI space because that's something that we do at Frontside. It's something that we've been doing for a really long time, and something that we've believed in when building UIs for way longer than it was cool to do so, is making UIs that are driven by state-driven applications. I mean, we love state, right? It's the M in MVC. Um, it's just that apparently managing state is hard, right? Like, there's a lot of if and outs about like managing state. Like, gosh, it's more difficult than it should be. It's state management is something you hear about a lot. It's like one of those can't live with it, can't live without it types of things. But it should be simple, right? I mean, it's like not that hard, right? You've got some simple Pojo. Like, if we want to render a user, we've got a simple Pojo that says that, like, you know, here's the username, here it's authenticated. It's simple, and we can build a React component or some sort of component that renders that, no problem. And if we need to transition and make me authenticated, well, it's simple, right? We're just gonna have a new object that contains the new information. It's simple, right? Like, if we were to actually encode this transition, it would look something like this. Something about the user changes, the object representing it changes. That's really simple. Um, except, like, in reality, like, state man is like so deep, like really deep. Because you got the user with its authenticated flag, but actually, in total reality, in real life, it's embedded within a session, and that's embedded inside of an application. And that application is your state, right? And this is actually a simple conception. IRL, as we know, like, shit gets complex, like, fast. So, like, if we wanted to read our original is authenticated Boolean, we've got to say state.application.session.user.is authenticated, and that's how we get there. Um, and if we want to transition from that state, like that state tree over to the state tree. We've got, just to set that little thing from false to true, we've got to respect the whole tree if we're doing it immutably, which we all should be. But to do that immutably is actually a pretty big gnarl fest, because it's going to look something like this, where we're spending a lot of time copying the old values into the new value, right? So we've got our new state over on the left, and we're, by using a combination of object spreads, like we're copying all over the user, but then providing the one flag that needs to update, which is the is authenticated and true. But as you can see, that kind of really sucks because the signal to noise ratio is very low, because most of our code here is actually dealing with the context. It's dealing with the fact that we have this Boolean is authenticated, which is buried in a user, which is buried in a session, which is buried in an application. And like, we don't need to know, we don't care about all that context, right? We just want to focus. We want to focus on that one thing. We want to focus on that is authenticated, and not worry about the context in which it appears. We want to be able to add another layer of context and not care and not have to change any code. We might want to take the session or the application and bury it inside of, like, an app container or something, like, some other object, but not have to change our reads and our writes. And so if we want to focus, then what we can use is lenses, right? And it's this idea of focusing on the data that we're interested in to the exclusion of all the other stuff that does not really matter, and yet have all that stuff being taken care of for you. So they let us act in kind of joyful ignorance of whatever context. They're that sword that kind of cuts through that coupling. So here we have what we had to do, which was state.application.session.user.isAuthenticated. This is what reading that state looked like before. It may not look really bad, but it actually is, as we'll see later, because you're just coupled to 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of context. With a lens, what you can do is you encapsulate the context. And so you can create a lens out of a path. This is a helper. And so a lens lets you encapsulate that path so that we can operate only on that one little variable that's buried way down deep in the center of the onion. So we abstract away the fact that what we're working on is application.session.user.isAuthenticated, and then we use the lens function called view, and that's one of the core lens functions. And it's view, and we pass it the lens, which abstracts away the context, and then we pass it the state, and you can see it gives us the value, which is false. So then, what does it look like on the other side? Do you remember this, like this thing? I mean, who could forget that? That's just, you just look at that and you want to jump off a cliff. Yep, you see a lot of this stuff in the wild. What does set look like after? Well, if we take that same lens, then we can say we want to set this lens. We want to pass the new value, which is true, and we want to pass the context, which is the state. And so that lens contains all the information of how to get to the bottom of that state, and just replace that one value and return a brand new object that's immutable, but only contains that one thing changed. So that can be that, like, the main thing I want to do is point out, like, this is the win right here. The differences between this and this, there's no coupling to the context when you use lenses, because the context is just packaged inside that one little lens. So I think at this point, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So we will do a demo. That's the end of the slides. I guess I can pause for any questions, and have a look at the Let me see. Oof. Oh, wow, 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 wow. We'll stop presenting and we'll look at the chat. If there are any questions, I can pause here before we proceed on to the demo. I'm not here. Is anybody talking? I guess you can post the links into chat. All right. In that case, we will go ahead and move on to the demo. So to do the demo, we'll go ahead and fire up RunKit. Okay. And then I'm going to share my screen again. Tell you what, why don't we move this over there? Okay. All right. So everybody can see my screen. I'm going to use Ramda lenses today. Ramda is a fantastic library. And I think we can say const view set. Oops. Cannot find module Ramda. Well, that's irritating. Just make sure I can. I'm sure I've got something not quite right. Okay, that worked. Okay. Right. Deuce. Like I'm okay. Somebody help me JavaScript. Okay. Looks like a bug in RunKit. Okay. So we'll call, I don't know, we'll just capitalize it. Okay, so let's have our state. And then we can have that we can have that application have a session, and then we need some other stuff, which has a user, oops, which has a username, as is authenticated. We'll make that false. Okay. Okay, let's make sure that that is all syntactically copacetic. Okay, so now you can see there's our application state. And we can add some, why don't we add some more properties? Like what's something else that a session might have? It might have like a local store or like a data that's associated with the session. And then that might have like cookies. Okay, so now we want to say, we want to create a lens into this authenticated value. So we say let lens equal lens path application session user is authenticated. And then I can use this to view that value with the lens. So I can say view lens, and I pass it my state. And, oh, whoops. I need to use, I'll just say ramda.view. Oh, man. That's so strange. Well, tell you what, if Ramda won't do it, we will use, I have a different notebook. Here we go. We'll just use, so ignore everything. Actually, I'll quickly, I'll use something from my little lens spike over here. We can't use Funkadelic. Now, I've got my own implementations of view and set. So please play. You get a little peek behind the curtain. Let's see, make sure that works. Okay, so now let's go back to that other notebook. We'll copy this here. And we'll start from here. Okay, so there's our state. Now I should be able to say and there we go. You see how it's false? And like that's all that we care about is that that's all that we care about is this one Boolean variable. And then, but if I want to actually set the lens, I can say set lens true state. Man, RunKit is not my friend today. I got one step closer, but okay, refresh the page. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So getting around that little foible of RunKit, so you can see I'm setting it to true, and now my session is exactly the same, except now my authenticated is true. And it's worth noting that this thing, this object right here is not equal to the original state. It's immutable. So I didn't mutate that is authenticated true. I didn't mutate the authenticated as true. What I did was I got a completely and totally new fresh set of the entire object with only that one field change, that deeply, deeply nested field. And that's because this lens right here captures and abstracts that location, and I don't have to worry about any of that. So that's the basics of lenses, is getting it deeply nested data, setting deeply nested data, but being able to have the tree behave in an immutable fashion. And so I guess I open up for questions if there are any. If there are any. All right. No questions? Nobody? Thought I saw someone typing. Maybe, maybe not. Is everybody ready to start using lenses? All right. Well, I hope that was helpful. Lenses, this is just the surface, but this is the basic use case of why you would want to use lenses. And so they're fun to experiment with. There's definitely a bunch of head trippy moments where you start using them, and you definitely have some like mind blown moments, like when it feels like you're slinging entire trees at a time. And all of these things that you're dealing with, you never have to spread an object really ever again and worry about dealing with where you're coming from. You can just focus on where you're coming to. All righty.